I was hit with a crippling, devastating depression, the likes of which I had never experienced before in my entire life. And I had experienced depression throughout my entire life, from the time I was a child, but it was never totally crippling. I could still hang out with friends and have an okay time. This was on a totally different level. My earlier depression was like a cup of water being thrown in the face. This was like a tidal wave. It just absolutely crippled me. Best way I can describe it is laying in bed, curled up in a fetal position, just begging God, please either take my life or heal me. Take my life or heal me. The first 2 or 3 years of my depression, that's more or less where I was, in bed. I think I may have actually had a nervous breakdown without really understanding what was happening. There was times when I would walk in circles around a little table in my room. It was like I was trying to cope with the pain of depression mixed with anxiety. It's very difficult to describe depression for anyone that hasn't experienced it. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that depression is feeling low, or maybe the reaction to a death in the family or some kind of grief. Certainly that can be a form of depression. The kind of depression that I was experiencing, which is called Major Depressive Disorder, an all-encompassing, crushing, devastating, crippling depression. It's a psychic pain, I guess is the best way I can describe it. You cannot feel joy, peace, happiness, comfort. You can't experience any of those things. At the same time, you can't experience sadness. And depression isn't sadness. It's pain. It feels like death. That's the best way I can describe it. It feels like death. So the first 2 to 3 years, I really was pretty much unfunctional. I would force myself to function for my kids and for my family sometimes. Like on Halloween night, I would try to get up, and in those first few years, I couldn't even do that. So this depression, it lasted from 2007 until 2014. It was 7 straight, relentless years, basically being like a zombie. The living dead really is the best way I can describe my condition. 2007 to 2014, I was a drug-addicted, profoundly depressed zombie, worthless to my family and worthless to anyone, including myself. In the first 3 years of the depression, I really believed that any day I was going to be healed, that God was going to release me from this pit that I was in. But when I reached years 4 and 5, I started to really despair, and I was beginning to wonder if I was ever going to come out of it. By the time I reached years 6 and 7, I was basically convinced that my faith had all been just a fantasy, or that I was just so guilty of sin that I had fallen out of the umbrella of God's grace. By the time of the 7th year, I was just done. I just wanted to die. I was convinced that I was cursed, and I came to the conclusion that this was going to be the rest of my life. And I started asking myself if I could do that. Could I live the rest of my life this way?